Sentire Media.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of A New Life in Italy. I'm your host, Samantha Wilson, and today we have a really special episode lined up. Now, if you've ever dreamed about packing up your life and moving to Italy, but the timing never felt quite right, well, this episode is for you. So what happens when you decide not to wait until retirement to follow your dream? And what if instead just moving, you actually build a business in Italy to support your new life here? Well, that's exactly what today's guests, Tanya and Davide, did. Now, Tanya is an American and Davide is an Italian-Swiss dual citizen. And he's always planned to move to Italy someday. But like so many of us, life, responsibilities, and timing always seem to push that dream further down the road. Then, during COVID, they had a moment of clarity, like many of us did. They realized that there was no reason to wait. So they made the bold decision to move ahead of schedule, becoming empty nesters and entrepreneurs in Italy at the same time. And today we're diving into what it really takes to make that kind of a move, how they planned it, where they settled, the cultural shifts that they've experienced, and what it's been like to start a travel business in Italy. So if you've been sitting on your dream waiting for that perfect time, this episode will inspire you to rethink that timeline. So stick around because you do not want to miss this conversation. I'm Samantha Wilson, Chief Dreammaker at smartmoveitaly.com, and this is A New Life in Italy, a show where each week I take you behind the scenes of what it's really like to move to Italy, introduce you to some fascinating people, answer your questions, and show you how starting a new life in Bel Paese is possible for you. All right, let's dive into this. Moving to Italy, well, it's a really big decision. I talk about it all the time. But moving while you're balancing work and family responsibilities, well, that takes an extra level of planning and some courage. Now, most people think about relocating to Italy after they retire. You know, when life feels a little more settled, money is a little more predictable. But the truth is, there's never a perfect time to uproot your life. There'll always be reasons to wait, job or family, finances, or uncertainty as we're feeling now. But there's also something to be said for taking the leap now and figuring them out along the way. And that's exactly what Tanya and Davide did. You see, they'd been dreaming of living in Italy for many, many years, but originally the plan was to move later, after retirement. Then, like so many of us during the pandemic, they started to rethink everything. They realized that they wanted to enjoy Italy while they were still young enough to really fully embrace it and do all the things that they want to do here. So they fast-tracked their plans. They left Minnesota and they made Italy their home. But deciding to move was just one part of their story. Actually doing it, choosing where to live, and adjusting to a new culture, even starting a business, well, that's where the real adventure begins. One of the biggest things I admire about their journey is how intentional they were about choosing where to settle. Instead of just picking a place at random, they took a smart approach. They tried out different locations. They lived in multiple cities before making their final decision. And now they're using everything that they've learned to help others experience Italy in a deeper, more personal way through their travel business, Amici Vacations. Now, I'll let them tell you all about it, but trust me, if you're wondering how to move to Italy before retirement and how to make a living here while you're here, or what it takes to integrate into Italian life, this episode is packed with insights. So let's meet Tanya and Davide and hear their incredible story. All right. Well, I am excited today because I have two amazing people who have made the move to Italy a little bit in advance. And Tanya and Davide are here. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. So where am I talking to you guys from now?
We are in Montepulciano.
Montepulciano. Okay, so I've already explained who you guys are a little bit, but I want you to tell me in your own words who you are and why you're here.
Well, I'm Tanya Raso, and with me is
Davide Raso.
And so we are married, and Davide is an Italian, and Our story began back in Switzerland where we met and I was an expat, but Davide
Yeah.
being Italian and we were introduced, to the Italian culture. I was introduced early and we fell in love with Italy, or I fell in love with Italy, and we would come here a lot together before we moved to the US. But it was something we always said we would do one day is, oh, we should move to Italy. We should retire in Italy.
Yeah.
And I don't know, at the time it was maybe more of a pipe dream than we thought it was going to be real. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Davide, so you're Italian, clearly, and you were born in Switzerland?
Yeah, I was actually born in Switzerland and I grew up in Switzerland. And my parents are from Calabria and they emigrated into Switzerland when they were very young. So that's why I was born in Switzerland. So
you went Switzerland, then you both went to the States. You moved to the States after you got married, I'm assuming.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I was in Switzerland for 3 years. We got married in Switzerland and had a fun international wedding. And then I moved back to the US and brought Davide with me. I would tell everybody he was my souvenir.
Yeah.
Well, in Minnesota. Too.
I had the choice of two places in the US, and one was Florida, and the other one was Minnesota because Tanya had
family there,
relatives there. So, and I chose Minnesota because Florida, to me, it was too warm. And I needed seasons.
Yeah, right. But was it a bit of a shock, Davide, for you?
A little bit. The winters, where, I learned fast that Minnesota has two seasons, winter and construction season. So, it was, but I got used to it. I mean, it was now 24 years.
Yeah, we were there 24 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So long time. And you had a family there. So that was your home.
It was our home. And we had 2 children. So Luca and Elena. And at the time I was in, public accounting. And then I left and went into a medical device company. And I was there for 21 years. But we had a full life, busy, hectic, too hectic.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we really learned, the grind. And our kids are starting to learn a little bit of that now. And we're like, it's kind of part of life as you're working and going to school and raising a family and their sports and all their activities. But that was kind of part of it. It's like, gosh, life is hard. And I think we lived for vacations. We brought the kids early on from as soon as they were born to Switzerland and Italy and would kind of go back and forth between the two countries. And, travel was a big part of our life. But I kind of say this because it's leading up to, it was that grind. And once the kids went off to college, where we're like, how much more of this do we want to do? Do we want to start living where we vacation and having that be part of our lives versus looking at the next vacation as our escape? And I would always tell people, in our corporate meetings, and you have to introduce yourself, something about you. Well, I'm either on vacation or planning a vacation. It's really
and isn't that a sign, right? That's a sign that something needs to change for sure. So you decided, but you were planning on, working your way like most people do up to retirement and then enjoying your life. I mean, that's how I always feel like people talk about that. It's like, I'm going to work and work and work and work, and then I'm going to live my life when I retire and come to Italy. But you decided enough was enough, and you came early.
We did. And, I think part of that was triggered by COVID, or largely triggered because it just sort of exacerbated that feeling of, God, we're working all the time. I was working from home, 12-hour days, 14-hour days. And the kids were looking at me going, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, all I see you is sitting at your desk on Zoom calls. And is this the life that you imagined? I'm like, no, thank you. So it was exacerbated, and they're going off to college and we were becoming empty nesters. So it was like, well, do we want to sit in the suburbs with this big empty house thinking about what was, or do we create an adventure for ourselves? And as I was getting burnt out on this corporate life, like, what else would I do? And we'd always talked about, like, in retirement, like, I'm not a person, I think, who can truly retire. It's just not in my wiring. But like, we thought we would be in hospitality. Maybe we would have a bed and breakfast. And then it was, our friends that we would always bring to Italy with us and neighbors, because they're like, oh, we're too intimidated to go by ourselves. Could you just like adopt us as part of your family and let us go with you? And we're like, sure, come. And they were like, God, you should do this. Like, this is like, a lot about Italy. Like, you can really add value and make it easy for other people. Yeah. So I like toyed with this idea of like, well, I'm always planning vacations and I love Italy. Like, should I have a business that plans vacations for people and tells them about Italy that I know, and the Italy that I got to know being part of an Italian family and having those insights. And I didn't know I knew that stuff, but when we were with people, they're like, well, why are they eating at this time of day? What are we eating? How do we order? What is this? What is that? And I'm like, I know. Oh my gosh, I know this stuff.
I hear you. And you don't realize that. That's just part of who you are and what you do. And you don't realize that, what you love, other people do too. And you can totally share that and create a business out of that.
Exactly. And so then we were like, well, maybe we shouldn't wait till we're retired to do this, because in many ways too, we're like, God, timing 60, 62 or whatever that would be. It's probably exactly when our kids might be getting married. It might be when they're having kids. It might be when our parents need us. Yeah. And then we're going to be like talked out of
another reason. Another reason to put it off. Right.
Yeah. And so then we're like, should we do this when we're still relatively young? I don't always feel young, but we're in our 50s and we're healthy. And I think COVID also highlighted that could change in a heartbeat, that you're healthy and you're not healthy. And I think too, as we're aging and we're seeing other people head into retirement, I don't think it's really coming through, what they envisioned it was going to be, whether it was health issues or an inability to travel, mobility issues. And I'm like, it'll be just our luck. We'll finally be wanting to do this and we won't be healthy enough to do it, or we'll be so caught up in our children's lives or our parents' lives that we won't do it. And actually the courage and all the energy that it takes to start a business and to do something like this, I'm like, we're going to chicken out. I know if we wait, we're going to chicken out.
Yeah. So you started your business, which is called Amici Vacations, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you started that business before you made the move?
We did. We did it back in 2022. Okay. And that was right when I left corporate, and we spent 2 months in Italy, was our first venture, and based ourselves on the Amalfi Coast. And, it was a tough job to have to be there for
It was awful, horrible. I can't imagine.
I mean, that was also a test.
The pain of it all.
I know. And we're like, wow, this is work. We're calling this work. We're in the Amalfi Coast researching and making connections. Yeah. And then we based ourselves in Calabria with Davide's family.
And for us, it was a test to see, can we be there more than 2 weeks, at a time? Can we imagine to live here? And so it was kind of a test. So we took off and we spent there 2 months.
Yeah, we
Christmas
tested the waters.
And then we came back.
We liked it. And then we said, okay, well, let's continue doing this. And, I wasn't sure how the travel planning business would go, to be honest, because I'd always planned my own vacations. I'm like, okay, I'm going to become somebody that I didn't myself use.
Yes.
And how prevalent is that in today's day and age with the internet and everybody doing their own trip planning? So I wasn't sure, but I was surprised in how many people contacted me, first starting through friends and family and friends of friends, and slowly it grew. And I'm like, okay, I think this is actually a business and it could be enough. Like, I mean, I'm never going to be making millions being a travel planner, but what we realized, and the nice thing about Italy, is you don't need millions to have a good life.
It's about balance, right? It's you have enough, you're doing what you love, so it makes the work easier, and you get paid for it. So sometimes how much you get paid for it, as long as it's helping you live the life that you want to live, it doesn't matter how much that is, right? I think the motivations are different, or the priorities are a little different here.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think that's what we learned, as we're aging. And I call it my midlife revelation versus midlife crisis to kind of rebrand that a little bit of, we learned, like, we had the big house, we had the cars, we had the big life. And I tell people, like, I always thought like I was acquiring these things and I was owning them. And then someday it switched and it felt like they were owning me. And I was working as hard as I was working because I needed to afford the big house and the cars and the vacations and all the things that we did. And I'm like, is this really bringing us joy? Like, I now have to take care of this house and I have to take care of this big garden, and we have to, I don't know. I felt like I was in debt to always somebody. Like I had to go do something to earn all this. And it was just the stress and anxiety of it all. It was like, I need a simpler life. I want to do what I love to do in the place that I love being the most. And how can I then share this love and passion with others and help plan amazing experiences for them that are authentic and immersive and using what we know. But then, Davide is a podcast producer. And so then he's like, well, and he's been in the music industry for the last 15, 20 years producing people. And then it was like, I was thinking of toying like, oh, should I do a newsletter too and tell people what I know? And I'm like, that's too much work to sit down and write everything. And he's like, well, we should turn this into a podcast. That's what I do. And I'm like,
your podcast is great, by the way. I listen to it all the time.
Oh, thank you.
Do you? Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I'm going to put it in the show notes. So for anyone else listening out there, it's called Experience Italy with Friends. And it's really great because it's kind of, it's kind of a travel one, right? Like it's a travel lifestyle one about your experiences in Italy and where to go and stuff. It's really cool. I really like it.
Thank you. Now we have a lot of fun doing it. And who would have thought me as this boring accountant, finance executive would someday be talking in a podcast and sharing our lives, but it's really fun. And Davide, I mean, you're good at this.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this now for the last 6-7 years. I've been producing podcasts for a network in the United States, in Minneapolis, actually, and they're most sports podcasts that I'm producing there with the Vikings and the Twins and all the teams from Minnesota. But I also started out with music podcasts. I'm producing another podcast called Music on the Run for St. Paul Peterson, who has worked with Prince. And I was just back in LA to do these podcasts. And we had fun guests on it. And that makes it not, fun for me to do though. So and it's quite a change of producing music, which I've been doing for the last 15 years as well. So
and we have fun with each other. Like we've never worked together. There are times where maybe there's a little tension as we work together and live together and be together all the time. But I think we have fun doing this and sharing it with others. And also that there was a slight kind of side agenda with the podcast too, is that we could talk about some of the things I would be sharing with my clients. And I would write these guidance documents for them. And then I would realize nobody likes to read the guidance documents, and they would just want to have more time to ask me the questions in person over Zoom calls. I'm like, now you can just listen to me talk on this podcast and I will answer all of the questions that you have, since you don't want to read.
Well, isn't that the truth? And you have so much to share too. So it's a great way for you to not only share your experiences and connect with obviously your people, but to build your business as well. Because I think there's what you're doing, a couple of things that really inspire me with what you're talking about. One is that you just, because I work with lots and lots and hundreds and hundreds of people. And so many of them come to the point where they have this, like you said, you called it a revelation. I think you called it that all of a sudden COVID was the trigger for you, which I think was for a lot of people. They had a bit of a wake up call, but, sort of rested back into their routines and almost are annoyed with themselves for not taking the opportunity when they maybe could. And now you guys, for example, are a little bit different than some people in the fact that Davide is Italian, so you don't need any visas. You can come here in an easier way and you can work here. But what I really like what you've done is that you did it in steps. So you didn't, although you've gone all in because you live here full time now, you didn't go all in right at the beginning. You took baby steps really quickly, it sounds like, but still tested yourself and the process along the way. And now you're living this life that you wanted. And, it's still life. So there's things that aren't great, because it's life. But you're in a place that your priorities seem like they're more aligned. And then you can still work and do something that you really love to do. both of you, even Davide, you're still doing what you're doing now, what you were doing before, but in a different environment.
Yeah, exactly. And now that I've been here now for 6 months, I'm slowly connecting with people in the industry here, and hopefully that will result into more work. And yeah, I mean, it's fun to connect with other people in my industry, because some they work for Georgia or Alessandro Amoroso or all these Italian artists.
I told him he needs to get in with Zucchero, because I love Zucchero.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Nobody knows who you're talking about.
Maybe not, but all these Italian artists, and it's fun. So I'm looking forward. Or we were just talking to our real estate agent. She didn't know I was a music producer, and said, "Oh, one of my clients, he's a producer too." Oh, okay, yeah, he produced the Foo Fighters, and said, "Oh, can we connect?" So.
Yeah, there's a lot of really artistic and creative people that move here and that come here. They're attracted to it because it's Italy, as you know, has this, way of sort of freeing your mind and your soul to, inspire you to do something else. I love it. This is great. So tell me where you're living now, because I know you've lived in a few places, right?
Yes. So we tested different areas in Tuscany. So we spent a month in Pistoia. Mm-hmm. Then we had a month in Montepulciano. Mm-hmm. Then we had a month in Castiglione Fiorentino. Mm-hmm. Then we took kind of a side, not really a looking place, but a place that was central, Poggibonsi. Mm-hmm. We love saying that word, Poggibonsi.
Yeah.
But we had our family visit over the holidays, and so that was a good location to be. And then Davide went to the U.S. for a couple of weeks while I found a place in Siena. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because we weren't able to move into our apartment here in Montepulciano until February 1st.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was just recent. So we've done a lot of moving around and wanting to experience the different locations before settling on and choosing Montepulciano, and understanding why we chose Montepulciano and felt confident in it. So, Davide, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the different places and how we got here.
I mean, Pistoia, we chose that one because strategically it was close to Florence, but also to the coast. And so and that was a different area too that we have not seen much. I mean, we went to Lucca, and in 2023, we actually stayed in an Airbnb in Montecatini Terme, which we chose as a base to kind of explore Tuscany. And so to pick these three places. And then we came down to Montepulciano, which I thought that, I don't know if I want to live in a touristic place like Montepulciano. So I was kind of scared. But I have to be honest, when I arrived here, I was sold. I was like, Valdorcia is so gorgeous, and it's exactly what we were looking for. And yes, we came in a time where the tourism was dying down, but it was beautiful. So, and then Castiglione Fiorentino was recommended by some people that when we were looking an area in Arezzo, because that was the other choice that they recommended, no, go stay in Castiglione Fiorentino. It's near Cortona and it's close to Arezzo. So we did that. We went there in 2023, and
we actually thought that was going to be our choice, to be honest. Yeah. And that's why we picked it third. We're like, let's not get overly biased.
Right.
By Castiglione Fiorentino and not give the other two a fair chance. So we're like, let's save it for last. Okay. And it actually could be a very close second. It's beautiful there. Cortona, as you know, is quaint and beautiful. And I think all of us who grew up with Under the Tuscan Sun were introduced and
can relate.
Yes, and swayed by the Tuscan charm of that movie and the location. So we enjoyed it, but nothing could top the Valdorcia. And I think we look back, and for 25 plus years, this is the area that we loved the most, and didn't think it would be maybe possible, or it was too expensive. And it's proved that it's not overly touristy as we thought. It's not overly expensive, and it really has this agricultural community that it is all about the wine. And that speaks to us. And we love that when we went on, or we go on walks, that we're walking amongst vineyards and cypress trees and have these amazing views. And I think that's what we were missing in the other 2 locations, or for sure what we didn't have in Minnesota. We had lakes and beautiful, but we were always escaping to go see this image. Yeah. And then we're like, we're here. Like, it's so amazing to live in this place that we would dream of escaping our lives to go visit, and to call this our lives, and making connections and friends with winery owners. Like, we have to tell you the story. So our first weekend here, one of the wineries that I've gotten to know as part of my business invited us to a wine event. They have their
Anteprimo del Vino Nobile, which is it's like a preview of the new vintage of the Vino Nobile.
So they had this big event at the Fortress, and he's like, there's going to be all these wineries there, showing their new vintage and wine tastings. And we're like, yes, of course, we're coming.
I'm in. Yeah.
We're like, our first weekend, and we're going to a wine event. And he's like, and that night there's this dinner. You should really come to the dinner. There's a bunch of wineries at this local restaurant. Yeah. Be a part of this. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're like barely in our place, and we're getting invited to like a wine event, a wine dinner. And we sit down, and it's probably, 60 people at this event.
Yeah, it was huge. And
just the dinner was about 60 people, a few different tables. So we sit down, and we're like, well, we don't know who we're going to sit next to, but we're just going to meet. And okay. So we're talking with our neighbors, and we were sitting across from each other. Davide is sitting next to a man who introduces himself as, I'm Michele.
I'm Michele. Nice to meet you. Oh, nice to meet you, Davide. And then
I'm next to Enrico, and we're like, "Hey, nice to meet you." We're like, we don't know who you guys are, and pretty soon Enrico's like, well, Michele is the mayor.
Yeah.
And we're like, are you like what?
I'm sitting next to the mayor, so I'm honored, and soon enough, I'm changing my Michele to a mayor. Signor Sindaco, my attitude changed.
And then
totally
Enrico
changes. Now you're nervous. Yeah.
And then Enrico is talking as if like, well, I just work at a winery. I'm part of operations and production. And then Davide is like Googling, and he's like, Tanya, he's the owner of the winery, like one of the bigger wineries in town. And I'm like, oh, hi, nice to meet you, Enrico.
Oh, so funny.
So we're just like, oh my gosh, like we're here, we're getting introduced to like, and they're so welcoming, and they're, passionate about the city. And I think that's what we're finding about everybody that we meet is they're passionate about where they live, passionate about what they do. And most are in it for the authentic, right reasons, and not, exploiting the area. Or, in my business, I'm meeting those who are a little bit, less authentic or focused on the tourism. You see them all over social media, and they're getting hyped. And as I meet more of the tour guides and local people and making those connections, which I love about being here, it's like I'm seeing those in it for the right reasons. And I feel like there's so much of that around this area where they're like, it's tourism, but that's not what drives us. We're motivated because we love the land. We love wine. And when you get to know them and understand what drives them of, one of our favorite wineries here now is explaining, they're selling it for 20, 30, 40 euros of what they make. And they're doing all this work. And then he went to Canada to meet with one of his distributors, and they're selling it at restaurants for 120, 140 euros. And he's like, and I'm here in Tuscany making 20.
Well, yeah, but Canada, they're probably making 10 because of all the taxes.
Yes, probably.
But you know what? I was going to ask you what you thought the main differences were, like between your life in the U.S. and here. I think you just explained it. It's that connection to people and community and prioritizing life. It's just everything that, and I know this always sounds like so cliche, but it's really truly part of what I've learned to be the Italian culture is that there's purpose and meaning in what you do, and pride in the work that you do and the people that you know and your friends and your family. It goes beyond just, it's not transactional in any way, shape, or form. That's the biggest difference in my opinion.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about the grind, and we wanted to get off that. And the pace, the pace here is so. It's just like way slower than in the U.S., and that's exactly what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we came here. Is we want to do it now. We want to experience being in retired in quotations, but actually do something with purpose.
Yeah. And I think also I wanted to add, I mean, one of the things we learned in trying to create a schedule here and find a routine, what is a perk of having a business that is maybe US oriented still. I have my first Canadian client.
There you go.
But still the time difference that I can work a little bit in the morning, and then we're off doing things in Italy, across the region around town, and can go live during the day when it's light out. And then, I'm online in the evening when the US is waking up. And we learned, like, as soon as 3:00 hits, our phones are blowing up. There's emails, there's texts. And so we're like, okay, we need to have fun before that starts happening during the day.
Yeah. This is a really good point, because most foreigners, when they move here and they start their business, obviously, very few foreigners build a business to attract, that services Italians. It's typically they found a gap in the market here to service foreigners because that's usually where they're bringing their experience and their skill from. And you're right, balancing the time change can be a challenge. It can make for very long days if you start working. I mean, if you're going to play and hang out in the day, that's perfect. But if you start working at 8 a.m. and then you have to continue on till 9:00 at night, it can be dreadful. But you can balance your life. I think it's the whole key. And your whole story is that you decided that's what you wanted. And you're making your own rules. You decide when you're going to take the call. You're going to build your business here in Italy how you want to do it and live the life that you chose.
No, exactly. I mean, you summed it up perfectly. And it's taking us a while to find that perfect balance. And I'm finding sometimes I'm my own worst enemy in that. And I look back and understand of maybe the grind wasn't all corporate's fault, and it wasn't all just the corporate, American culture. It's my own wiring, and I have to work on rewiring myself to find and achieve this balance. And I think it comes a little bit more easy to Davide, who was like, nope, not doing that. Nope, not doing that. And I'm like,
he gives himself permission. Yeah, exactly. Old habits die hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a freelancer for 15 years. I've been freelancing for that long. And so I put my hours, I chose my hours even in those 15 years. So, and, I would come home, even in the US, I would come sometimes home at 3 p.m.
Well, you were at flexibility, and that was great because I didn't have that. So then you were the one taking the kids to all of their extracurricular activities
or just
driving
take time
them around
for myself and go on a bike ride.
Right.
And yeah.
So what, as we wrap it up here, your story, what advice would you give someone who's listening saying, oh, maybe I can do this earlier than I expected? What would you tell them?
I would say have the courage and trust yourself, because, and I think in all of our preparation, we had a ton of anxiety, and we were like, should we do this? Should we not? Can we do this? Can we not? And we got to the point of like, okay, trust ourselves. Like, we have 30 years of professional experience. We have built successful careers. We have learned a lot. We've got connections. Davide in the music industry, me, and just the people that networks that we've built, and we can figure this out. And I think at first we thought we had to have all the answers before we got on the plane, and we got a lot of them beforehand. And I have to say, Smart Move Italy was super helpful in preparing us and helping us think through all those questions and making sure we were confident. But at some point we said, you know what? We're not going to have it all figured out. And if we wait till we have it all figured out, we're never going to do it. And we're going to talk ourselves out of it. So let's just go and believe in ourselves. And the worst case, what can happen? That we alter how much time we spend here. We go back to the US. We take on consulting projects back in our field of professions. There's tons of accounting and finance needs out there. So I don't know. I think that's the advice is trust yourself, trust the skills that you've built. And I don't know,
and lean on them.
you got to take a chance.
Yeah. Maybe I can add to is that, yes, I speak Italian, I speak the language, and most people that move here that are non-Italian, they don't speak the language. But I have to say in the last 30 years, more and more Italians do speak English, which is a help. But I say this to anyone who wants to move here, start maybe learn a little bit Italian. If you're really serious about it, to move here, start to learn a little bit Italian. I mean, Tanya she's been learning it, and now that she's here, she speaks more and more and more because she's,
in the middle
of it.
With it,
Well, and that's a really good, place to end this is that, Tanya, you talked about bringing the skills that you have and trust yourself and your experience and bring them here to Italy and, build your new life using those old skills. But Davide, you're also saying you still need to learn a little bit more because you still are in a different environment. So the blend of the two are really what is the secret sauce, really, isn't it? It's the secret to the success.
It is. And I have to say, I haven't, I guess, brought this up before, like Davide being Italian and us having parents or my in-laws in Calabria now that they are retired. Like, it has made a huge difference knowing Italians, having those connections. And I think that's the other thing we learned is how many things are done because I have a friend or I have a friend who has a friend.
This is Italy, my friend. It's all about who you know. I say it over and over. It's a country built on relationships for sure.
Yes. And so that was hugely helpful. So between Davide being Italian, his parents' connections, and it's made the transition easier. So, maybe others wouldn't have that, but that's where I do encourage people to get professional help. And I relate this to my own business. Yeah, you can do your own travel planning, but it's less stressful if you hire somebody who knows and can take that stress away. And you can go on Facebook groups and figure out how to move to Italy by yourself. And I have to say, having the confidence and the help and the experience of, Smart Move Italy and others in that line of profession has been a huge help to us. So
huge,
invest up front to save yourself the stress and the time later. And I think that's with every type of service industry. You can watch a DIY video on how to tile your own floors or but how much waste goes into that and trial and error, and is it really the end product? So I don't know. Leverage people's experience, leverage what they know, and ask for help, because you can do everything yourself, but why? And you're going to make some mistakes.
And then just do it.
Just do it.
And then just do it. Awesome. Okay, you guys, what a great conversation. I loved it. Now I'm all inspired again, and I'm already here.
But I hope we inspire others. That really is a good point, too, about both the business, travel planning, as well as our podcast is we love sharing this passion with others and the knowledge that we've obtained. And it really is to inspire other people to take the leap and either just travel here, move here, stay here a little bit longer, like experience and get to know the Italy that we love. And it kind of inspired both names, Amici. Friends for vacations. And we want to bring friends here and create an Amici network. And the tagline of Experience Italy with Friends, and how we built that into our podcast, because it is about that. Like, we want to help people experience the Italy that we know and love. And I got to be married to an Italian now for 25 years, so they can share a little.
You got something to say. Poor Davide. Well, you guys, thank you so much for being on. I'm going to put, obviously, Amici Vacations, your link to your website in the show notes for sure. So anybody who wants to go and see what they do, which is really incredible, they can click on that, as well as, of course, your podcast, Experience Italy with Friends. So thank you again, you guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you,
so
Sam.
much,
This
Sam.
has been so much fun.
Thanks for having us.
And again, thank you for your company and your service that get here and inspire us to take the leap that it can be done.
Oh, well, it's been so much fun. Thank you anyway for that. You guys take care, and I'm sure we're going to chat soon.
Yes, I hope so.
Thank you.
Well, that was a very inspiring story. Tanya and Davide's journey is really a powerful reminder that you really don't have to wait for the perfect time to follow your dream. And moving to Italy really is a dream of so many people, and not everybody actually follows through with it. Now, of course, you have to meet certain criteria if you need a visa, or like Davide's lucky, he actually was Italian, so the pathway was a little bit smoother for them. But there is a pathway usually for most people. It's just how long you wait and what you need to do to make it happen. So let's just recap some of the key things that we talked about today. Number one is there is no perfect time to move. So whether you're retiring or you're still working, making the move abroad is about prioritizing what matters to you now. Tanya and Davide could have waited, of course, until retirement, but instead they made a plan and they made it happen on their timeline. And number two, be flexible. I talk about this a lot. You have to be flexible about your new life and blending in, even where you live. Now, initially, depending on how you're here, you might have to pick a place and settle in for about a year or so. But Italy's a big country with a lot of different regions that offer a very different lifestyle. So it's a great strategy to think about that, to spend your time traveling around Italy and feel out where is the best place for you. And finally, building a business in Italy is possible, depending, of course, how you're here and if you're able to work. Now, Tanya and Davide turned their love of travel into a career, and they provide that creativity and that persistence in everything that they do. So you can create a sustainable life in Italy beyond just traditional jobs. So if this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you been considering moving to Italy before retirement, or are you wondering how to make living in Italy possible? So come and join us in the conversation over on Instagram or in our Facebook community. And don't forget, if you love this episode, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on what's coming up. We've got some incredible guests lined up and more deep dives into what it really takes to create a life in Italy. Until next time, my friends, ciao for now. It's time for listener questions. Just like the old radio call-in shows, my team has picked 3 listener questions, all left on our voicemail. I have no idea what these questions are, but I haven't been stumped yet. Are you ready? Let's get started. All right, question number 1. How much money do I really need to move to Italy? Oh, I get this question so many times. And I always say the same thing. Italy typically, in most cases, is much more affordable than the country you're living in now, your home country, in most cases. Italy, in my opinion, is super cheap for all the fun stuff, which is most important, like food and wine and entertainment. You know, most of these places and cities, it's like an open air museum. Florence, for example, is. It doesn't cost you anything to spend the day wandering around and looking at beautiful things. It's really a different lifestyle here that you don't need to pay for everything to do to keep you entertained throughout the day. So you're living here. That fun stuff is pretty affordable. Where we're finding prices rising a little bit right now is in rents because, of course, it's hard to find a rental in this country, and especially as a foreigner. And so we're also starting to see availability, a little bit less availability, so prices are starting to go up. So most of your money will be spent in rent. Number 2, how hard is it to find work in Italy as a foreigner? All right, so this podcast episode talks about building your own business, and this tends to be what people mostly do, most foreigners do when they come to Italy, because finding a job, unless you speak fluent Italian, is really, really challenging. So if you're thinking about moving to Italy to find work, or you have a way to work and then you come to Italy looking for a job, just be very patient and realize that the wages here are incredibly low compared to what you might be used to. So there's a huge adjustment. My recommendation is always to keep your work in your home country so you get the pay and the environment that you're used to, and work remotely here in Italy. Or again, get inspired and start your own business here. Lots and lots of opportunities in Italy. Question number 3, where is the best place to live in Italy? Oh, what a huge question. Man, that depends on what you want out of your life. This country is so diverse from the north to the south. We have, the sea all the way around us. So if you like the water, there's a million places to choose from. My best suggestion is to come to Italy and focus on one specific region or area. And don't try to overdo it. Don't think I'm going to learn about Puglia all the way up to, Lombardia. I'm going to just check out all of Italy to see where I want to live, because you just will be confused. It's like, too many choices. So I suggest find the place that seems to resonate with you the most and spend some good quality time in that area and search around in the different little towns and discover the cities where you'll be doing most of your shopping and the little towns where you might be doing your community things and meeting your friends. And then, of course, what do you want to do? Do you want to travel around Europe, or is transportation important for you? So start thinking about the practical things that you need, because Italy is a dream, of course. I mean, it really is. But eventually the honeymoon does wear down and wear off, and you are faced with just life here. So the things that you need to exist, like good healthcare, good transportation, airports close by, services, where you can shop and buy your things. Some people need home delivery or other types of services and facilities. So make sure that you think about yourself and, what life means to you, a quality of life means to you, apart from the great food and wine and Italianness that we have here. Really, what do you need to live happily and comfortably for a long time? And then find those areas and really dive into the region itself and see what feels the best. What I always find with Italy is every little town has its own little vibe. And for some people, one might just feel like home and the other one not. So take your time. Come here for extended periods of time first and decide where's best for you. Well, that's all for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about visas, citizenship, property, and, really anything about moving to Italy that you would like me to answer in an upcoming episode, please feel free to send us a voicemail at our website at smartmoveitaly.com/podcast, or just click on the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and remember, you can find all of the resources and the links to the people and the places that I mentioned in this episode inside the show notes. Ciao for now. A New Life in Italy podcast is a production of Sentire Media, created and hosted by me, Samantha Wilson. Production by London Nero, and with special thanks to Ali Frothingham, Sofia Pisana, and the entire team at Sentire. Follow A New Life in Italy wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you're thinking of moving to Italy, whether full-time, part-time, or for a lifetime, come and see me over at smartmoveitaly.com, and we'll help you get here and start living your best life. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please rate and leave a review. It's much appreciated. I can't wait to meet up with you again next week, same time, same place. Ciao for now.
Sentire Media.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.